VoIP hacking isn't something new.
No.
Why is it making the headlines in South Africa these days?
Well, the first attempt of hacking in the voice world goes back as far as 1950, believe it or not. Not necessarily in the IP world, but in the voice environment. What's happened now is more and more technology is moving to IP-based platforms. Voice is one of them. In the past, there's been numerous hacking attempts over normal IP internet networks. Now that we're putting voice on it, there's not as much, there wasn't enough focus on the voice element and the security around that up until now. Hackers exploited that opportunity and they made a killing from it.
And are they exploiting South Africa and Africa as a continent?
They'll exploit any country where VoIP is being introduced.
Now, VoIP is being introduced very quickly now, suddenly. But what are some of the VoIP hacking trends in South Africa, and can you name some recent examples?
From a customer's perspective, the trend is that a hacker has got no intent to pay for a call being made. So the trend is they set up call centers or call kiosks. They will offer a call at a ridiculous rate. That's the first sign that the consumer is using a hacked service. They will find a hole in the customer's network and they will make calls as if they're phoning out of the customer's network and with the intent not to pay.
Now, these hackers that are hacking into these systems, are they coming from our own borders or beyond?
Both. It's not so much where they're coming from as where the calls will terminate. We see a lot of calls terminating to Nigeria. I mean, that name comes up in every conversation. I would guess probably 60% of calls in our network, the attempt is to phone Nigeria at this point in time.
So international calls?
International calls.
Now, who's your typical VoIP hacker?
Internet hacker. It will be a highly skilled engineer, someone that with nothing to do. We know that VoIP hackers or the internet hackers per se, they go to hacking conferences, there's websites. So hacking is an industry in its own. And that's typically people who get fascinated by these kind of technologies.
Now, in terms of protecting your systems, why is there seemingly this gap at the moment, especially in South Africa, between the uptake of the technology and understanding to put the right risk policies and security procedures in place?
Customers aren't advised correctly, and the cost element is far greater on voice than it is via normal internet. Internet, you've got capped bandwidth, you've got capped internet breakout. Voice, there's no stop to it. As long as I can make that call, I can phone for the entire day, 24 hours, and the customer will only pick up there's a problem towards the end of the month when he receives his invoice. So that's the customers aren't being advised accordingly. So a guy who's got a kind of a security breach on his network, in the past it didn't hurt him quite that much. Now it will, because of the cost.
You suddenly get a statement with 100,000 rands worth of calls. Now, you're speaking of advisory.
Right.
Where does the vendor or the VoIP service provider come into all of this?
I think the vendor needs to be internet and IP sensitive and educated, so he needs to say to the client, we're moving all your voice traffic from where it's typically had to run on a separate network, it's now running on a single network. These are the security risks. They've got to advise, and secondly, they've got to provide the customer with tools that should there be a risk, it's identified quickly. So usage reports, exception reports, daily analysis, trend analysis. A customer by default fits into a certain profile. He makes 5-minute calls to these destinations for 8 hours a day. VoIP hackers will try and stay within those parameters. They run their operations with stopwatches, but some of them, the uneducated ones, won't try and stay within that parameter. They'll make calls at night, long duration calls, and that's what we should pick up as a vendor and advise the customer and say, something happened here, let's fix it, close the gap on your network.
Now, when you're speaking to corporates as customers, you're usually dealing with management who are making the financial decisions of buying the service from you. How involved are you guys of actually speaking to the IT departments who are supposed to be implementing and monitoring these services?
I think very lucky for us, you can't implement unless you consult the IT, so the IT department. So the financial manager will make the call to say there's a cost saving, but you can't complete the work without talking to the IT guy.
Now, just as a wrap up, voice over IP and IP-based attacks are more than just on telephone systems. Can you give us a brief overview of some of the other technologies that are hackable from this perspective?
Any form of voice today, if we talk at the network level, network operators tend to try and hack each other. So a VoIP hacker will make out as if he's a network operator and then attract the specific interconnect fee. We'll have individuals trying to hack SIM cards, normal mobile SIM cards, not so much in South Africa because we use a different kind of technology, but definitely in Europe. Those are predominantly the three biggest areas: SIM card, network, and then what we've just discussed called subscription hacking.
Jacques du Toit, MD of Vox Orion, thank you very much.
Thanks, Natascha.